Today, we're not just having a discussion, we're conducting a full diagnostic briefing. We're going to dissect an invisible system of influence, a kind of social architecture that operates just under the surface of our everyday lives. This is the vulnerability trap, the anatomy of an informational seize. This quote, "This is the key to our entire analysis today." It completely reframes how we think about vulnerability. It's not a weakness to be smashed through with force. No, it's a blueprint that can be requested right from the source. The target isn't attacked, they're actually invited to hand over the schematics to their own mind. And that brings us to the name of the game, a neurological heist. Now, this sounds dramatic, but it's a clinical term for something that feels deeply personal. We're not talking about old school manipulation with lies and threats. This is about mastering the art of getting someone to willingly tell you their weaknesses. The weapon isn't a lie. It's your own deep human need to feel understood.
So let's start at the very beginning. In Section 1, the blueprint of the self, we're going to completely dismantle one of the most common ideas we have about sharing, and we're going to expose its hidden strategic purpose. You know, most of us have been taught that sharing builds a bridge between people. But in the framework we're looking at today, sharing is actually a one-way intelligence operation. It's a mapping mission. So when someone is listening to you with that intense, unbreakable focus, what feels like caring is often a form of auditing. They're not just hearing your words, they're calibrating. They're pinpointing your moments of shame, your pride, your fears, your ambitions. They are literally mapping the entire emotional landscape of your mind. And this is where it gets really interesting, because this chart breaks down that massive gap between what you perceive and what's actually happening. You experience their active listening as them caring, right? But the strategic reality is they are auditing your psychological balance sheet. You feel those spikes of validation and think, I'm safe here. In reality, they're just calibrating your triggers. And that feeling of connection, the one built on them sharing just a little bit to get you to share a lot, that's not connection. It's a highly efficient data harvesting operation. Look, this isn't just some abstract theory. This system produces a very real, very predictable outcome. So let's move on to Section 2 and take a look at the transparent victim pattern. This timeline here shows something we call the pattern of sudden erasure. And I'm willing to bet we've all seen a version of this play out. A talented person feels safe with a new mentor. So in month 1, they make a small, calculated disclosure. Something like, I really struggle with imposter syndrome. By month 3, that vulnerability has been rewarded. There's more intimacy, more validation. The bond feels real, authentic. But then you get to month 6. It's time for a big promotion review. And suddenly, that exact disclosure gets weaponized. The mentor says, with this fake concern, given everything you're going through, I just don't think you're mentally ready for this role. The ammo you gave them has just been used to put a ceiling on your own career. So what's the end result? It's a condition we call agency atrophy. And this right here, this is the systemic failure. It's that critical moment where your deep desire to be authentic, to be seen, becomes the very chain they use to control you. You're not being managed by threats. You're being managed by an informational baseline that you happily provided. You've basically handed over the remote control to your own future because someone made you feel safe for an hour. So the big question is, how does this happen mechanically? Let's switch gears and get a bit more clinical. Section 3, the informational seize architecture. We're about to break down the engine that makes this whole thing run.
This system operates on a really clean 4-phase loop. It starts with what's called the false mirror. Then it moves into affective flooding, then vulnerability mapping, and it all culminates in something called a reputational monopoly. Let's break down each of these steps. Phase 1 is the false mirror. So the operator starts the whole exchange with a small, calculated vulnerability of their own, something that sounds totally harmless, like, wow, I'm actually pretty nervous about this presentation. Now, that's not a real share. It's a strategic prime. It's designed to trigger a powerful social reflex in you called reciprocal pressure. Your brain is hardwired for fairness, so it feels this immediate, almost unconscious need to match their disclosure. And just like that, the gate is open. And that leads us straight into Phase 2, affective flooding. The operator basically becomes a vacuum. They stop talking, and they just engage in this deep, uninterrupted listening, asking you these open-ended questions about your history, your fears, this intense validation. It actually triggers something called prefrontal deactivation. Your logical filters, the part of your brain that's supposed to assess risk, just go offline. That rush of dopamine and oxytocin you get from feeling heard becomes a drug. And at that point, stopping the flow of information feels like cutting off your own air supply. So now we're in phase 3, vulnerability mapping. And this is pure intelligence gathering, nothing else. The listener offers zero judgment, creating this perfectly safe space. And as you're talking, they are just systematically identifying your guilt triggers, the things you're ashamed of, and your ego triggers, the things you're proud of. They are anchoring the very act of disclosing information to the feeling of relief inside your brain. They're creating what we call an ammo anchor. You now associate telling them your deepest secrets with feeling good. And this slide just lays it out so clearly. In a healthy relationship, sharing is a tool for mutual growth. The power balance is symmetrical. But in this model, what we call informational rent-seeking, disclosure is just a resource to be extracted and leveraged later. The power balance is completely asymmetrical. One person provides all the data, the other one assesses it for weaknesses. You're not a partner in a conversation, you're a data mine. But here's the question. Why does this work so incredibly well, even on smart, analytical people? Okay, let's move from the how to the why. Section 4. The psychology of surrender. We've got to look at the deep biological programming that powers this whole system. The answer really lies in something called the heuristic of intimacy. Think of it like a cognitive shortcut, a glitch in our brain's software. Our brains are basically wired to equate the feeling of intimacy, that warm chemical rush you get from sharing, with actual, real-world safety. The feeling becomes the proof, even when there's no real proof at all. The brain gets an immediate reward for sharing, and it prioritizes that good feeling over the long-term, abstract risk of just staying quiet. Now, what's so fascinating about this chart is how it visualizes the brain's flawed math. That immediate reward, that intimacy hit of dopamine and oxytocin, it's powerful, it's tangible, it's a huge bar on the chart. The perceived threat, on the other hand, this abstract idea of losing control down the road, that feels distant, not as real. So the brain, making a split-second calculation, overwhelmingly goes for the immediate chemical payoff, every time. So to solve this internal conflict, we engage in a little cognitive dissonance. We create a story to make it all okay. We tell ourselves, this person just really, truly understands me, because that feels so much better than facing the cold, biological truth, which is, I am being chemically managed by my own need for validation. So how do you recognize that you've been captured by the system? The key is to shift your perspective away from how you feel and toward an objective analysis. And this brings us to section 5, the confidence paradox. The moment of recognition, that aha moment, is the disclosure safety disconnection. It's when you finally take a step back and you audit the inventory of information you've given away. You suddenly realize that the huge level of intimacy you feel with this person is completely out of line with your actual level of strategic safety. You've given them everything, but what have they really given you, besides a good feeling? Which forces you to confront a really uncomfortable but logical question. The person who knows all your secrets, all your fears, all your ambitions, isn't that, by definition, the person who is in the absolute best position to control you? The person who knows it all is the person who can control it all. And this leads us to the absolute core of the problem. It's the confidence paradox. The very same person you trusted with the whole you, the one who you thought knew you better than anyone, has now become, because of that total knowledge, the single greatest strategic liability to the future you. Their knowledge of your past is the leash on your future. And that brings us to our final section. Now, this isn't a list of easy fixes. It's a strategic imperative. Section 6, owning your own filter. Real power isn't about radical authenticity or just being an open book. It's about understanding the strategic value of your own information. It's about recognizing that your thoughts, your fears, your vulnerabilities, they are assets. And just being aware of this entire system is what makes it collapse. So the final takeaway isn't some tactic. It's a diagnostic weapon. It's a fundamental change in mindset. Stop leaking ammo, start owning your own filter.